Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get the meeting underway. I'll declare the meeting open at 2:01, and in doing so, acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, and pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the RDAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the RDAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. My name's Clayton Hine. I'm the presiding member for today's meeting, and on the panel I have Francesca Lafante, the deputy presiding member, and Agata Kabanak, the specialist member. There are no apologies, no members on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the RDAP website. Moving on to part B, which is the item from Shire of Derby, West Kimberley. I need a declaration of due consideration. Can members confirm they've duly considered all the material before you with a show of hands? Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of interest?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Moving then on to the item at Fitzroy Crossing, workforce accommodation units. We have one presenter today with Peter Simpson, just reminding Peter that you're limited to 3 minutes. So over to you, Peter, to make your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. As put in my submission, we support the recommendation to approve. We're asking for some minor changes to the conditions, which I'll address. This is obviously quite an important development. It has grant funding by the federal government to provide staff accommodation for the adjoining residential aged care facility. The design has been well considered, and as part of the project team, we've obviously got approval from the Aboriginal Lands Trust, which is a separate application, and the Bunava Aboriginal Corporation. We're working quite closely with the Bunava Aboriginal Corporation in terms of progressing the development. As I said, it's very important for the future of the RAC to enable retention and of staff for the aged care facility. The key issue at this present time for us is the timing for us to get a building permit. And the reason for that is because the wet season will start in October, November, December, and so we need to get this done before that time so that it can be up and running. Otherwise, potentially we lose about 6 months. So in terms of the conditions, I've outlined 4 conditions. Condition 3 and condition 16, I've just noted that they might be more appropriate as advice note. It probably makes no difference to us if they stay as conditions. Condition 14 is just typographical, is just referencing the actual management plan that was prepared. I think that might have been a typo from a previous one. Condition 15 is probably the most critical for us. And I've put 2 options, which is either to remove the requirement to refer to DFIS or to change it to occupancy. Our current request would be to change the conditions so that the BEEP is required prior to occupancy. Reason being is because the BEEP is currently being prepared, but it's probably about 3 weeks away, and we want to try and submit the building permit ASAP. So if we can request that it be prior to occupation. And that's all I have. So we seek your approval and with the consideration of those conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Questions?
I only have one question, but it's more of a general comment. The condition 14 of the proposal is to do with the bushfire management plan, and you've spoken about the dates details on it, the reference details. I suppose my question is that it's quite specific about implement and maintain. There does not appear to be much opportunity to amend just through the Shire. Do you have any comments that you wish to make about that? Typically, these types of things allow for a level of opportunity to amend to the satisfaction. I'm just wondering if you have any specific comments about its rigid nature. I might have the same question to officers.
I think it would probably be beneficial. Obviously, things change and some of the other conditions require changes. So obviously it'd be beneficial if any alterations as a result of agreements with the Shire was able to be incorporated into that condition.
That was my only question.
Thank you. So the bushfire emergency evacuation plan is, I presume, the original requirement to have it before or prior to building licences. It might alter some of the arrangements on site. To your understanding, is that likely to occur? No. So the existing RAC has its own evacuation plan, and so this is really dealing with staff. So it's probably not as critical as the RAC, but it is dealing with staff. And it talks about the evacuation management plan. It does suggest things like staying in place. That's probably unlikely. The more likely is this is the evacuation route. This is where you go in time of evacuation, and this is how we're going to do it. So it's not going to physically change things on site? No. Okay, thank you. And realistically, to be honest, the staff are probably going to have to go into the RAC to assist with evacuation of those residents. So they'll be sort of evacuating themselves. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. No further questions?
I've just got a tiny follow-up, which I think you've sort of answered. So this, the matter that you're currently referring to in relation to the bushfire management plan and the BEEP, none of the issues raised require resolution prior to building permit being resolved.
No, that's my understanding.
That was my clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Peter. We'll move on to the officers. There we are. Is there anything that you want to say at this stage, and also incorporate in that, do you have any issues with the requested changes to those conditions?
Yes, thank you. I'll first introduce myself. My name is Scott Van Eland. I'm a senior planner acting on behalf of Shire of Derby, West Kimberley. And to my left is Courtney Wynne, coordinator of urban planning, also acting on behalf of Shire of Derby, West Kimberley. I'll probably, so no comments, but I will go through some of the requested changes as part of the applicant, if that's okay. In relation to condition 3, no objection for that one being amended to a advice note. In relation to condition 14, no objection to the update of the correct wording to reference the bushfire management plan, which is provided as an attachment. In relation to condition 15, the reason the Shire has recommended that this is in place prior to the submission of a building permit is just that if the bushfire management plan does make mention of a possibility of shelter in place requirements can result in a higher order building in order to accommodate that. And those specifications will need to be provided at a bushfire or at construction phase and implemented as part of the building permit application. Also taken a approach that transient workers could be considered possibly a vulnerable land use in that they come into the site and they might not entirely know how everything is. So it would be appropriate in this instance to resolve that matter upfront at a building permit stage, in the opinion of the Shire. In relation to condition 16, this is in direct relation to the submitted bushfire management plan, which does rely upon a potable water supply being provided for the site for a hydrant connection. So that is why that's been recommended as a condition and not just an advice note in this case. In addition, it is an indication of the Aboriginal settlement management plan for the residential land use. Those are the Shire's comments.
Thanks, Scott. Questions of the officers? Just as a follow-up perhaps to the issue of around condition 15, how long would would it take to prepare the building licence for the licence issue?
That would be ultimately up to the matter for the applicant in terms of how long it would take them to prepare that documentation and lodge with the Shire. If it was a building permit application lodged from the time it's receipted by the Shire, it was a 10-day statutory timeframe for that being issued if all the information is provided. It's for a certified application.
Okay. I was just trying to canvass the idea of the process starting and the VEEP being submitted during that process. Anyway.
Could I ask a question? In the context of that concern, the applicant has obviously an obligation to ensure that his building permit is consistent with the bushfire requirements. Wouldn't a device note assist in putting it up front that the applicant will need to meet the on completion or prior to occupation, the applicant will be required to obviously have the requirements of the bushfire emergency evacuation plan consistent with the associated provisions. I suppose my broader question is: are you concerned that the developer or the constructor of the transportables will be unaware of the site conditions that would result in construction commencing inconsistent with the layout and bushfire obligations?
Not so much with the layout and the installation of the buildings. We'd expect those to be installed in accordance with the submitted plan. It's if anything comes directly out of the evacuation plan that, for example, if the bushfire consultant decides that shelter in place is an appropriate situation and may be necessary for this site, they need to obviously identify shelter in place, and there's additional requirements in terms of upgrading a building effectively for a shelter in place scenario. If that building has already been installed on site, it is a risk obviously for the applicant in that case. And if it was to be pushed down the road in terms of, we'd probably require a certification to be provided prior to occupation or use of the development. Certification is to be provided by a suitably qualified person that the buildings have been constructed to a specification consistent with the adopted bushfire management plan and emergency evacuation plan. That's probably a suitable compromise.
Can I just make a couple of comments?
We'll come back to you, Peter. Just see if there's any more questions of the staff at the time.
My other comment, if I may, is in the same way that I asked the applicant, do you have any comments about condition 14, providing in the last paragraph, essentially, that where it says the bushfire management plan having been fully implemented within the development or amended to the satisfaction of the Shire on advice from DFES. Do you have any concerns with the opportunity, the provision of any level of variation, compliant variation to the bushfire management plan being able to be managed through conditions?
There'd be no concerns with that.
Thank you. That was probably...
Anything else?
That's probably my...
Okay. Thanks, guys. Look, I'll just hang in there. I'll just ask Peter, because I think we need to get to the bottom of whether or not there is actually going to be some requirement out of the VEEP for different form of construction or shelter in place.
I think, yeah, so in terms of the Bale contour map, just about the whole site is in Bale 12.5. So it's at the very low end of the rating. There's only one building, which is the southwest corner, that goes into a higher requirement. There's also obviously management in terms of bushfire management, in terms of keeping the vegetation low on the western side. And if you look at the aerial, there's actually not a great deal of vegetation there in terms of matured vegetation. So I don't think they would get to a point where you're sheltering in place. The other thing that concerns me with sheltering in place, and I'm not a bushfire consultant, but I recently did one up at Mundaring, and a shelter in place would require a masonry building with, screen windows and all those sort of things, and that's quite significantly different from what we're proposing here or what exists on the RAC site. So it's our view that we won't need to upgrade building shelter in place. It's more about the evacuation of those people. And as I said, those people are staff of the RAC, so if there is a bushfire, they'll be called to go to the RAC to assist with the evacuation of those people.
So the officers have suggested as a compromise certification prior to occupation, I suppose, that the buildings satisfy the requirements of the bushfire management plan and the beak.
Yes, so that's the condition already, I think,
Yeah.
condition 14, which is that we have to certify it prior to occupation, that it meets the requirements of the bushfire management plan, bushfire management plan.
Which incorporates the beak.
Which incorporates the beak.
Okay. Scott, is that going to be satisfactory from your point of view, or you're still saying that really, so you're happy with the compromise where it's certification prior to occupation?
Yes, I would, just for complete clarity, put in after approved bushfire management plan and bushfire evacuation, emergency evacuation, just for clarity, to make sure there is that check at the time it is lodged back with the Shire.
Okay, so, and then condition 15 then goes to prior to occupation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, okay, so 14 becomes, or could become, the bushfire management plan and the emergency, then the beat.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. That's very good. All right. No further questions of the officers? No?
Not from me.
Okay. We'll move on then to the item itself. Recommendation for approval with conditions, and we can deal with any amendments once we get this on the table. So is there a mover? Thank you, Francesca. And a seconder for that? I'm happy to second that then. All right. Francesca.
This is a great development. It's having had a look at the material provided in the documentation, the aerial, as well as having a look at the associated plans referred to, including the settlement plan. This is a very good use on the site. It is framed by existing development on either side of it. It is consistent with the, obviously as part of the settlement zone, but more importantly, it's part of the layout plan and site zoning and the local context. I'm satisfied that the design and site configuration incorporating its material, its associated materials, is specific and appropriate for its location, recognising the bushfire considerations we've had, and it will be and that the associated checks are in place in relation to the bushfire management plan. I also note the Water Corporation's comments that the proposal is capable of connection to water services for accommodation and firefighting purposes they referred to. Overall, I am supportive of this proposal. I would like at this juncture, if I may, to move some amendments.
Yes, please.
My amendment 1 is to delete condition 3 and move it to an advice note, which would be whatever the next number of the advice note is. Advice note, oops, it's going to write on my computer there. Advice note 5, and essentially I agree with the comments from the applicant that this doesn't really have a planning purpose. It's more specifically as note, and therefore it's deliverable through the relevant agencies based on the services that are in the area.
A seconder for that amendment? I'll second that. Thank you. I don't think there's any further
No, I have
discussion
nothing
necessary on
further.
that. I'll put that amendment. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Manchester.
I have amendment 2, which is the modification to condition 14. My modification includes the language that's been provided by the applicant in red, which is to reference the bushfire smart prone planning, reference the date as 15th of October 2024, and to reference the version number. I think at this juncture I'm including here the bushfire management plan.
The bushfire emergency evacuation plan.
That would be in this, for me,
Oh yes. Okay.
in the second paragraph.
Yep.
For the minute taker. The second part of this is in the second paragraph, the requirements of the bushfire management plan and the bushfire emergency evacuation plan, BEEP, and then the rest of the language is the same. And in the final paragraph for the minute taker, on the second line from the bottom starts with bushfire management plan have been fully implemented within the development, comma, or amended to the satisfactory and reference the correct version to identify the link between the bushfire management plan and the BEEP, as well as to provide the minor amendments or variations relative to the updates in line with commencement of occupation, that this can be done through officer or through the Shire rather than having to necessarily be referred specifically back to this forum.
Okay. Any further speakers on that amendment? No? Okay. I will presume you don't want to say more? No. I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
I would like, can I continue?
Yeah.
Amendment 3 is condition 15 me, and I would like to change the words prior to or in conjunction with the building permit. So I want to take out the words or in conjunction with the submission of a building permit and change that to prior to occupancy. That's my only change.
I shall seek a seconder for that. Yes, thank you, Agatha. Okay. Any further comment on that?
No, it's just to reference the ability for the, it's to in consideration of the timing and the uniqueness that's on site in terms of the wet conditions or the climatic conditions, and that these matters can be resolved prior to occupancy appropriately.
Okay. No further discussion on that. I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
I have amendment 4, if I may, and that is to delete condition 16 and replace it and move it to an advice note. I would also agree that that matter, they obviously need to get written, liaise directly with the Water Corporation, but I'm satisfied that that is more appropriate as an advice note, noting that condition 17, which does also link to condition 16, that I am not changing, actually requires them to connect prior to development, so I think it's clearly covered.
All right, any further discussion? Oh, we need a seconder for that one. Thank you, Agatha. All right, any further discussion on that one? No, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Still with you.
I have no other comments in relation to this.
As seconder, I'm more than happy to support it. It's I note the existence of the Jinjua layout plan, which has been endorsed under the local planning scheme. It is zone settlement. The residential use aligns with the objectives of the zone and the endorsed layout plan. It's a good complementary use to the adjacent aged care facility. The intensity and scale of the development is appropriate for the location. I'm satisfied that issues like water, waste and bushfire have been addressed or will be addressed through the proposed conditions, and I'm happy to support it. Any further speakers?
Yes, well, I'm satisfied that the proposed development has been assessed against the relevant planning framework appropriately, and I acknowledge the importance of this project in supporting the delivery of essential aged care services within the community. And I support approval of this application subject to the recommended conditions, which I consider to be reasonable, consistent with the current legislation and necessary to ensure the proper development of the area. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Back to you, Francesca, to wind up the debate.
Nothing.
Nothing further to say. Okay, with that in mind, I shall put the motion as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 4, there are no forms 2, no SAT 31 reconsiderations. In Part C, there are some SAT matters listed there. And I'll close the meeting at 2.